Charlie sips a glass of whiskey in a Pottsboro, Texas bar. She gets woozy just as she spies a group of men closing in on her. They drugged her drink. As the attack begins, Monroe breaks down the door and ruthlessly dispatches all the lowlifes in the building, saving Charlie's life. Meanwhile, Rachel wakes up in her bed in Willoughby after being unconscious for 3 days. She is covered in bandages, but she is alive. Outside, the tension in Willoughby seems to have disappeared, as have Titus men. In their place is the U.S. government, establishing order and peace throughout the town. Patriot director Ed Truman introduces himself to Rachel and informs her of his plan to see much more of her in the future. Injured while trying to break up a fight, Neville is late for work at the refugee camp. Deputy Director Vincent Cook does not like Neville. Cook is waiting in the wings for him the next time Neville slips up, ready to put a bullet in his head. Neville takes this in stride. Later, as both men change out of their uniforms and into civilian clothes, Neville notices a series of odd marks running up Cook's left arm. Neville has found Cook's Achilles heel. That night, in a brothel, Neville pays off a hooker and enters a room where Cook lies passed out in bed. Rachel is convinced the Patriots are up to something. Claiming Andover's men are still roaming the perimeter, they put Willoughby on lockdown. With plans to scout the outside, Miles orders Rachel to stay put. During the town's Halloween party that night, Rachel searches Truman's office and finds a folder with the Eye of Providence on it. Inside is a map with the Willoughby train yard clearly circled. Truman suddenly enters and catches Rachel. He angrily escorts her back to her father's home, where Dr. Porter promises it will not happen again. But the damage is done. Rachel knows something is up and Truman knows that Rachel is a problem. The Patriots catch a civilian named Bryce Gordon outside Willoughby. As Miles looks on from his hiding place, 2 Patriots thrash down and kill Bryce. In Willoughby, Dr. Porter begs Rachel to stop making everything her fight. He does not want to lose her again. Truman's aide, Scott, and the Patriots pull up in a wagon with Bryce's body, telling Dr. Porter that the Klansmen got to him. This is why they are telling everyone not to travel beyond the gates. Elsewhere, Charlie comes to the fire and finds Monroe sitting next to her. Monroe needs Charlie to take him to her mother, but Charlie ignores his appeals. When she tries to attack him, Monroe easily overpowers her, then assures Charlie that she has no choice in the matter. Aaron has another incident. He falls to the floor and hallucinates that he is traveling through Andover's camp. Suddenly, Cynthia wakes him up, fearing the worst. Meanwhile, Miles searches the now deserted Andover camp. He notices fireflies all around him, lit up with intrinsic energy. Miles enters Titus' office, only to find the clan leader still alive. Titus pulls a gun on Miles and blames him for the death of his beloved wife. Titus pulls the trigger, but it is empty, so Miles attacks. After a scuffle, Miles steps back, having stabbed Titus in the stomach. Andover is dead. Ken approaches Rachel as she is drinking a bottle of whiskey all by herself. She tells him her theory on the Patriots, and he promises to stand by her. After all, old friends need to stick together. Ken asks Rachel to walk down to his cellar with him to get more wine. But when she spies the Eye of Providence on the letter, she realizes it is a trap. Rachel tries to escape, but Ken knocks her out and drags her deeper into the cellar. Rachel wakes up, suspended from the ceiling, while Ken digs her grave. He admits to being a Patriot for the last 7 years. He is not supposed to hurt her, but he knows she must be stopped. Rachel springs into action, managing to stun Ken. Using her body weight to rip her hand clean from its manacle, Rachel drops to the ground and kills her former friend. The grave now belongs to him. After a quick burial, Rachel grabs all the intel she can. Cook wakes up in the brothel to find himself tied to the bed, with Neville sitting ominously at his side. Neville cuts to the chase. He needs promotion and wants to know Jason's location. When Cook continues to deny knowledge of Jason's whereabouts, Neville plunges a syringe into his arm, causing a fatal overdose. Back at the camp, Neville assumes Cook's role without asking. Allenford checks in but do not let on her surprise, telling Neville that Cook was transferred. Miles sneaks into the Willoughby train yard to make a terrifying discovery. Scott is there with some Patriot soldiers and Garrett, Andover's second in command, who is now in Patriot uniform. They execute 2 people and place them on horseback. Miles grasps the entire ruse. The Patriots are faking the attacks to win the trust of terrified citizens. Suddenly, Miles is made, so he takes off for safety. Meanwhile, Aaron begins to hallucinate again, this time while he sleeps. From a high angle, Aaron sees Miles escaping from the Patriots. When 2 soldiers corner Miles, Aaron somehow sets them on fire. Aaron bolts awake in his own bed. Near the train yard, Miles stares in horror at the 2 charred bodies as the swarm of fireflies drifts off into the night. Over whiskey, Miles and Rachel compare notes. Miles has no idea what happened but knows Willoughby is in a state of occupation, and every good occupation needs resistance. He and Rachel can fix it, but Rachel is worried. However, Charlie and Monroe are a mere 10 miles outside Willoughby and headed their way. Monroe and Charlie spy on Willoughby. Charlie wants to go home, but Monroe holds her back. Clearly, the Patriots have taken over. Meanwhile, Truman surveys the charred bodies of the guards that died chasing Miles. In a panic, Aaron tells Miles and Rachel exactly what happened to the guards last night. He fears he is to blame, but Rachel insists the nanites are not capable of that kind of intelligence. Suddenly, the town bell rings as 5 Texas Rangers ride into town, looking for Truman. The Patriots are occupying sovereign soil, and Texan Secretary of the Interior John Franklin Fry wants to know why his men should not kill them all right now. Miles tells Rachel that their best chance at starting a war with the Patriots just arrived. At the refugee camp, people are scrambling to get on the few wagons heading to a nicer camp in Parisburg. Secretary Allenford has been called to D.C. and needs Neville to be a part of her security detail. On the road, another Patriot convoy stops them, and the commander kills the guards and shoots Allenford in the stomach. Neville springs into action and shoots the commander dead, saving Allenford's life. Ordering his men to back off, Truman asks the Rangers to stay to observe Willoughby as proof of the Patriots' good intentions, but Fry refuses. He will tell the general about the Patriots, but he is leaving at first light. Soon afterward, Miles summons Fry to warn of the Patriots' bad intentions, asking him to bring the Rangers to Willoughby to fight them. With a history of bad blood with Miles, Fry cannot trust a word he says, and most of the Rangers are out fighting on the southern border. His boss wants a treaty, not a war. He will need hard proof to do anything else. Out of options, Miles asks Fry to meet him alone at Lasky's mill upriver at midnight. He will see his proof there. Aaron flashes back to his first days in Willoughby when Cynthia interviewed him for a teaching job at the school. Aaron was in a dark place, drunk and unable to overcome the aftermath of the nukes dropping. Frankly, Cynthia thought he would scare the kids, but Aaron begged her for a job. Back in the present, Aaron packs a bag and heads out. Cynthia asks Rachel to help her find Aaron, recalling his first days at the school just 6 months ago. She brought him a gag gift of chattering teeth because he never smiled. Her husband Carl showed up that day to threaten Aaron not to get too close to Cynthia. Charlie meets Miles on the street, where their happy homecoming is short-lived. After showing Miles Rachel's wanted poster, Charlie leads Miles out of town for another surprise, Monroe, in the flesh. Charlie admits Monroe saved her life, and he has come to help. Miles asks Monroe to go away, but Monroe presses on. The best way to defeat the Patriots involves both of them working together. Monroe is asking for a truce. Miles takes Charlie and Monroe to the train yard, but it has been scrubbed clean of any evidence of Fry. Monroe smiles mysteriously, confident they will come up with some evidence by nightfall. Rachel finds Aaron moping in the boatyard. Aaron insists he cannot return home. He is too much of a hazard to the people he loves. Aaron killed those Patriots just by thinking it, and it wasn't the first time. Aaron recalls an incident 5 months before, walking around drunk one night. He discovered Carl having sex with a woman in an abandoned car. Aaron's resentment for Cynthia's husband boiled up, and as he walked away, the car burst into flames, incinerating Carl and the woman, despite Aaron's best efforts to get them out. Regardless, Rachel advises Aaron to go home. They will figure it out. As Neville cleans Allenford's bullet wound, she tells him why the ambush happened. She spoke out about the camp where the Patriots shipped the young, healthy refugees. It is not a camp, but a reprogramming center offering a steady cocktail of LSD and PCP and violent behavioral conditioning to yield zombified killing machines. Realizing Allenford is now dead to the Patriots, Neville prepares to abandon her until she confesses that Jason has been taken to the reprogramming center. Neville stops dead in his tracks, demanding to know the center's location. Allenford offers to lead him there as long as he takes her with him. Miles, Monroe, and Charlie search the train yard under cover of darkness, finding nothing. Suddenly, shots ring out. It's an ambush. Just like in old times, Miles and Monroe take them out one by one until only Garrett is left. They drag him to Lasky's mill, hoping to extract information on the Patriots to give Fry. In the meantime, Aaron has another vision, which draws him and Rachel to the mill, where Rachel grabs a gun, hoping to kill Monroe. With Fry on his way, Miles disarms Rachel and tells everyone to hide. Rachel and Charlie immediately start fighting over Monroe. Charlie protests that Monroe has changed, but Rachel absolutely refuses to hear any of it. When Fry arrives, Miles is disgusted to discover Garrett used his cyanide tooth and killed himself. As far as Fry is concerned, his boss will not be starting any war with the Patriots without proof of their malevolence. A shot rings out, and Fry drops to the ground dead as Monroe steps out of the shadows. Now all they have to do is frame the Patriots for Fry's murder, and Miles will have his war. Miles and Monroe don't have time to think. They carefully plant evidence pointing to the Patriots at the mill, then tie a cinder block to Fry's corpse and dump him in the river. As the group travels back to Willoughby, Texas Ranger Malcolm Dove tells the others that Fry is missing. Dove and his men trace Fry to the mill and eventually find his body at the bottom of the river. When one of them finds a Patriot shell casing, Dove knows the first shots of a major conflict have just been fired. Miles and Monroe watch from a distance. Miles wanted a war and he is about to get it. 5 days later, Rachel and Charlie put up a front with one another as the embers still burn over their disagreement regarding Monroe. Dr. Porter cannot take it anymore. Charlie is back, and Rachel should just be happy about that. During a botched interrogation, Monroe obtains an unprecedented amount of information, but winds up killing a Patriot soldier. Miles is angry about Monroe going off script, but the results are results. Rachel confronts Miles about Monroe. Miles thinks Monroe can help against the Patriots, but Rachel is not buying any of it. Meanwhile, Monroe is literally smoked out of his hiding place. Outside, he is surrounded and arrested by a group of Texas Rangers and Patriot soldiers working together. Miles and Monroe's plan to turn Texas against the Patriots has officially failed. Neville and Allenford hike towards the Patriot Reprogramming Center. Neville tells Allenford that she is free to go as soon as he sees his son. That moment comes quicker than both foresee, as they soon come upon 2 corpses inside a tent, and Allenford realizes the cadets are in the middle of a field exercise. Suddenly, bullets fly in their direction, and Neville and Allenford run for cover. As they near a factory, Neville turns around to suppress the cadets only to find his son pointing a gun in his direction. The 2 lock eyes before Jason opens fire on Neville, forcing him to dive into the factory for cover. Locked inside, Neville rests his head on the wall, realizing the son he came to save wants him dead. 3 years after the blackout, the Monroe Republic was started in a small camp. Monroe and Miles were naive then, and Miles was the one who seemed like a sociopath. Monroe had a pregnant wife back then, and she was his whole world. Now, after being arrested by the Rangers, Monroe sits in a Willoughby holding cell, awaiting trial and almost certain execution. In a Willoughby bar, a reporter named Bonnie Webster approaches Aaron. She used to work at Forbes and remembers him gracing the front cover of their magazine once. She works for the Texas Press Corps. She remarks that her job is not to tell the truth so much as it is to create heroes and villains out of the news, and she is definitely making them today on account of Monroe's arrest. Deep inside the factory, Neville hides with Allenford. She knows there is only one way that this can end, with Neville killing his son or Jason killing the both of them. Neville tries to deny this, but Allenford breaks down in tears. Her son was in a similar reprogramming center in Cuba, and it made him a vicious killing machine. Neville springs into action, ingeniously taking out every cadet in the factory until only Jason is left. When Jason stops to check on the corpse of one of his fellow cadets, Neville puts a gun to his head and tells him to give up. A brutal fistfight breaks out. Just when it looks like Jason is going to choke his father to death, Allenford hits him with a metal pipe and knocks him out, saving Neville's life. Miles and Charlie try to break Monroe out of prison since they know he is their only shot at taking down the Patriots. But Rachel warns the Patriots of a possible jailbreak, and Monroe is moved to a nearby bank vault. When Miles confronts Rachel about it, she does not back down. If Charlie had been caught with Monroe, they would have executed her right next to him. Charlie tells Rachel that Monroe saved her life. Meanwhile, in a nearby courtroom, the Patriots condemn Monroe to death by lethal injection. The execution will take place at midnight. In a flashback, Monroe remembers the day that changed his life forever. His wife and baby died in childbirth, and he was at her side until the end. Monroe's heart hardened that day, and it never healed. Now, chained up and awaiting execution, Monroe cannot help but laugh at the folly of it all. Monroe asks that Miles be his final visitor. The two reminisce about the good old days before Monroe asks Miles for a favor. He had a son with Emma, and he has never met the boy. Monroe asks Miles to take care of him. Knowing that Monroe is going to die soon, Miles admits he knows about the boy and that he hid him from Monroe. Monroe cannot believe it. Miles walks away, leaving Monroe to die alone with his thoughts. Monroe is led into a packed courthouse, where Dr. Porter awaits. Porter claims it is an honor to be the one killing Monroe. In a flashback, Monroe remembers the point after the blackout, after his wife and child died, when he turned to the dark side for good. He robbed a nearby camp of all their supplies, just as Miles suggested, but he killed all its inhabitants. Just before Porter injects Monroe, he turns to Rachel and apologizes. Then his eyes widen, and slowly Monroe closes his eyes for the last time. Miles cannot help but mourn the death of his former best friend with whiskey. Bonnie, the reporter, tells Aaron he might want to skip town soon. Leveraging Monroe's execution, The Patriots and Texas Rangers have officially joined forces. Willoughby is now officially part of the new USA's jurisdiction, a little Guantanamo, deep in the heart of Texas. While Monroe's body is unceremoniously dumped in an unmarked grave in a field, Truman tells Porter to keep Rachel and Miles in line. Porter, who apparently sold out Monroe, warns Truman not to touch Rachel or Miles, mentioning Dr. Horn to Porter, who is a bit terrified to hear the name. Unbeknownst to both of them, Dr. Horn is just entering the town, in a wagon painted with the Eye of Providence and a Patriot flag. Neville has an unconscious Jason tied up in the factory, in hopes of waiting until the drugs are out of his system. When Jason wakes, he lies to his father, telling Julia was having an affair at the time of her death. He must have known since he is so good at reading people. Furious, Neville savagely backhands his son. Jason is all Neville has left. Whatever it takes, he will bring his son back. Neville begs him to come to his senses and join his side. Meanwhile, Rachel takes a shovel to Monroe's grave and begins to dig. Subscribe and hit that like button to help our channel grow. Turn the notifications on so you won't miss any of our new videos. Thanks for watching.